A young couple had been waiting for the day they would bring their first child home. When the baby girl finally came into their lives, she was the center of their world. They loved her deeply, but very soon they discovered something that broke their hearts. The doctors told them that the little girl had paralysis in her legs. Her movements were weak and she could not kick or stretch like other babies. The parents were crushed by the news. They had dreamed of watching her run in the garden, play with other children, and grow strong, but now they feared she might never walk. The mother often sat by the crib with tears in her eyes, holding the baby's tiny hands. The father tried to stay strong, but late at night he would sit in the living room, staring into the dark, wondering why life had to be so unfair. Both of them wanted to give their daughter every chance in the world, yet they felt helpless. The doctor said they could only wait and see. Maybe with therapy and time, something would improve, but no one could promise a cure. At the same time, something else happened in their home. The father brought back a small German Shepherd puppy one morning. He thought having a dog might fill the house with energy and joy. He also believed the puppy could grow alongside the baby, so they could be companions. At first, the mother was unsure. She worried that a puppy might be too playful, maybe even dangerous around such a fragile child. But when the puppy stepped into the nursery for the first time, something unusual happened. The baby lay quietly in her crib, and the puppy, instead of jumping or barking, lowered himself onto the floor. His ears twitched as if he could sense the delicate life in front of him. Slowly he wagged his tail and stretched his little head toward the crib, peeking in with wide, gentle eyes. The baby turned her head slightly and looked at him. For the first time in days, her lips curved into a faint smile. The parents noticed this moment and felt something shift in their hearts. They could not explain it, but it seemed like the puppy and the baby connected in a way that went beyond words. From that day, the puppy made it his mission to stay close to the baby. Wherever her crib was placed, he lay nearby. He did not chase after toys or bark loudly when she was asleep. He seemed to understand that she needed peace, and he gave it to her. The parents watched carefully as this bond started to grow. They noticed the puppy often raised his head whenever the baby cried, as if he was checking on her. Sometimes he would whine softly, and when the baby calmed down, he would rest his head back on the floor satisfied. The mother began to feel more comfortable with the puppy's presence, and the father felt grateful for the new energy in their home. Days turned into weeks, and soon it was hard to imagine the nursery without the puppy. The baby, though still unable to move her legs, became more expressive whenever the puppy was around. Her tiny arms would reach out toward him and she would coo softly. The parents were amazed at how much joy the dog brought their daughter. Even though she could not speak, it was clear she wanted him near. The father started leaving the puppy by the crib during the day. Sometimes he would even place the baby on a blanket on the floor and let the puppy lie beside her. The dog never once tried to harm her. Instead, he seemed to guard her, watching carefully as she stretched her arms toward him. Whenever her little fingers touched his fur, his tail would wag slowly, and his eyes would soften with warmth. The mother, who once doubted the decision, now found herself smiling whenever she saw the two together. "Maybe he understands her," she whispered one evening as she watched the scene. The father nodded. Maybe he knows she needs him. The doctors continued their visits, checking on the baby's condition. They told the parents not to expect much progress soon, but the parents noticed something the doctors did not. Their baby's spirit seemed stronger when the puppy was close. She smiled more, cried less, and her eyes lit up with excitement whenever the puppy entered the room. The puppy also grew quickly. From a tiny bundle of fur, he became more active and curious, yet he always returned to the baby's side. The family realized that what they thought was just a pet was turning into something more. He was not only a companion, but a silent comfort for their daughter. One evening, when the baby was restless and refused to sleep, the puppy climbed near her blanket and lay close, his body warm and steady. The baby stopped crying and placed her tiny hand on his fur. Within minutes, she drifted into sleep. The parents exchanged a look of wonder. They realized the puppy had a gift. He brought peace to their child in ways they could not. The bond was not something they had planned, but it grew stronger each day. The little girl, though paralyzed, was never alone. She had found a friend who seemed to understand her pain and offered comfort without asking for anything in return. In their quiet home, filled with worry and uncertainty, the puppy's presence brought hope. The parents no longer felt as hopeless as before. They saw how much their daughter responded to her new companion, and for the first time in a long while, they felt that maybe, just maybe, something good was on the horizon. The story of the paralyzed baby girl and the German Shepherd puppy was only beginning. What lay ahead was something no one could predict, but already something miraculous had begun to take root in their lives. It was not a cure, not yet, but it was a spark of hope, and sometimes hope is the first step toward a miracle. The days continued to pass, and with each sunrise, the bond between the little baby girl and the German Shepherd puppy grew stronger. The family began to notice small but important details that filled their hearts with hope. The puppy was no longer just a playful pet running around the house. He had become something more. It was as if he understood that his little human friend needed him in a special way. Every morning, as the mother carried her baby to the nursery, the puppy would already be waiting by the crib. He wagged his tail slowly, not with wild excitement, but with a calm rhythm, as though greeting her gently. When the baby's eyes met his, a tiny sparkle would appear in her face. She would smile in a way she did not smile at anyone else. It was a pure smile, the kind that seemed to say she recognized him as her comfort. Though her legs still lay weak and unmoving, her arms had grown more active. She would wave them around, trying to reach for the puppy whenever he came near. Her little fingers would open and close, as if calling him closer. Sometimes her small hand would brush against his ear or touch his soft fur. In those moments, the puppy would stay perfectly still, letting her explore with her gentle touch. The parents were amazed to see their daughter becoming so expressive. The mother often sat beside them, whispering softly to the baby. She noticed that her daughter's laughter was more frequent when the puppy was present. "Look at her," she would say to the father. "She lights up whenever he is near. She doesn't even smile at me like that." The father would chuckle softly, though in his heart he was deeply moved. He saw something powerful forming, a connection beyond what humans could explain. Neighbors who came to visit also noticed. "This puppy is different," one of them remarked. "It's like he knows she needs him." Word began to spread quietly in their small community about the unusual closeness between the baby and the dog. The puppy, though young and playful in other settings, seemed to sense when he was with the baby. He never jumped or played rough around her. Instead, he moved slowly, wagging his tail carefully as if trying not to scare her. When she cried, he would whine softly, tilting his head as though asking how to help. Sometimes he would nudge one of her toys closer to her hand as if encouraging her to play. The parents often found themselves staring in disbelief at these small acts. One particular afternoon stood out. The mother laid the baby on a soft blanket on the floor, and the puppy lay down right beside her. He stretched his paw forward, and the baby, with a determined expression, lifted her little arm toward him. Though she could not move her legs, her arms stretched as far as they could go. When her tiny fingers finally touched his paw, her face broke into a huge smile. The puppy wagged his tail, happy that she had reached him. The father, who had been watching from across the room, had tears in his eyes. "She's trying so hard because of him," he whispered. Encouraged by this, the parents started to use the puppy as a form of motivation for their daughter. They would place him just a little farther from her, so that she had to stretch her arms more to reach him. Slowly, she began to use not only her arms but also her upper body, twisting and moving in ways she had not done before. It was as though she wanted to be closer to her friend at any cost. The doctors who checked on her were surprised. They expected her to be less responsive due to her condition, but the opposite was happening. "Her upper body strength is improving," one doctor commented. "It's unusual, but she's showing signs of determination. Keep encouraging her." The parents knew exactly where that determination was coming from. It was the puppy who gave her the reason to try harder every day, every evening. The puppy would curl up beside the crib as the baby fell asleep. Sometimes the parents would catch the baby holding onto a small part of his fur through the crib bars, refusing to let go until her eyes closed. She seemed to feel safer with him nearby, as if his presence was her shield against the loneliness of her condition. The bond grew so strong that the parents often joked that their baby and the puppy had their own language. A small coo from the baby would be answered by a soft bark or whine from the puppy. The baby would giggle and the puppy would wag his tail in response. They were communicating in a way no one else could understand. The family began to see changes not just in their baby but also in themselves. The heavy sadness that once filled their hearts started to lift. Hope replaced despair. Instead of crying quietly at night, the mother now smiled more often. She spent her evenings watching the two play together. The father, once full of worry, found strength in the laughter that echoed through their home. As months passed, the puppy grew bigger, but his gentle nature never changed. He remained careful with the baby, even more protective as he became stronger. Strangers who visited were amazed by how patient he was. He would allow the baby to grab his ears or pull softly at his fur without reacting aggressively. It was as though he knew she was fragile and needed extra care. One evening, when guests were at the house, the baby was placed on her blanket in the living room. She stretched her arms toward the puppy, making soft sounds of joy. The puppy walked toward her slowly, sat down beside her, and placed his head gently in her lap. Everyone in the room was silent for a moment, watching the incredible scene. Then the baby giggled loudly, and everyone's eyes filled with tears. It was a simple act, but it carried so much meaning. It was friendship, love, and healing all in one. The parents realized that something extraordinary was happening before their eyes. Their daughter, who had once been surrounded by sorrow and fear, was now surrounded by joy and laughter because of the puppy. Though she could not move like other children, her spirit was alive and strong. What the parents didn't yet know was that this bond would soon lead to even more surprising progress. The puppy was not only a companion, he was becoming the spark that would push their daughter toward small miracles no one had believed possible. The months passed quickly, and the little baby girl continued to grow, though her condition still left her legs weak and unmoving. But what amazed everyone was her spirit. The bond with the German Shepherd puppy had filled her with life and determination. Every day brought something new, something small yet powerful. And in the middle of this story stood the puppy, who was no longer just a pet but a guardian, a motivator, and a constant source of love. The parents had begun using the puppy as part of their daughter's daily routine. In the mornings, they would place the baby on a soft blanket on the floor, and the puppy would lie down nearby. The mother noticed that her daughter's little hands always reached out for him before reaching for toys. This gave her an idea. She began placing the puppy a little farther away, encouraging her daughter to stretch and twist her body to reach him. The father joined in, gently cheering whenever their daughter moved even a little more than the day before. It was during one of these sessions that the first turning point arrived. The father placed the puppy just out of the baby's reach, and the girl, determined to touch her friend, pushed her tiny arms forward. She grunted softly, straining with effort. Suddenly, her torso shifted, and for the first time her body inched forward on the blanket. The puppy wagged his tail, excited, and barked softly as if cheering for her. The parents froze in shock. They had never seen her move that way before. The mother's eyes filled with tears. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The father nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She moved. She actually moved toward him. Though it was not a movement with her legs, it was a sign that she was finding strength in her upper body, and more importantly, it was the first step toward something bigger. From that day, the parents made this little game part of their daily schedule. The puppy seemed to understand his role. He would patiently sit just far enough away for her to reach, wagging his tail and lowering his body to appear approachable. Each time she crawled or twisted even a little, he rewarded her with licks on her hands or face, making her giggle with joy. Soon her efforts grew stronger. She was no longer just stretching her arms, she was trying to drag her body forward. Her legs did not respond, but her determination was fierce. The parents were astonished at how much energy she showed when the puppy was her goal. Toys and colorful objects did not bring the same reaction. Only her furry friend had the power to spark her will. The doctors who visited the home were surprised by the progress. One of them said, "It's unusual. Many children with her condition show less activity, but she is pushing herself more than expected." The parents explained the role of the puppy, and though the doctors smiled politely, it was clear they were amazed. "Sometimes motivation is stronger than medicine," one of them admitted. One afternoon, a remarkable moment took place. The baby had been placed on her blanket, and the puppy was lying nearby. For some reason, the puppy stood up and walked to the other side of the room. The baby watched him carefully, her eyes fixed on her friend. Then, with surprising strength, she began pulling herself across the floor. Inch by inch, she moved, her arms trembling with effort, her face red with determination. She cried out softly, not in pain, but in sheer effort. The parents watched in disbelief as she moved farther than she had ever managed before. When she finally reached him, the puppy lowered his head and licked her cheek gently. The baby let out a burst of laughter, the sound of victory filling the room. The mother covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. The father picked up the puppy and hugged him, whispering, "You're her miracle." From that day, progress became more frequent. The girl began to use her arms to drag herself around the room, following the puppy wherever he went. He would crawl slowly, waiting for her, never moving too fast. It was almost as though he knew exactly what speed to go. The house, once filled with worry, now echoed with laughter, giggles, and the soft pitter-patter of paws guiding a child forward. Even neighbors who stopped by were astonished. One of them said, "She's moving more than before. It's like the dog is teaching her." Word of this unusual friendship began to spread in the town. People came to see for themselves, and each time they did, they left with tears in their eyes. But the most unforgettable moment came one evening when the baby was placed on the floor as usual. The puppy sat a short distance away, wagging his tail. This time, the little girl not only pulled herself forward with her arms, but also tried to move her legs. Her feet twitched slightly, a movement so small it might have been missed if the parents were not watching closely. The mother gasped, "Her legs, did you see that? They moved." The father leaned closer, his heart pounding. It was true. The legs that had once seemed lifeless gave a faint sign of movement. Perhaps it was not yet strong, but it was real. And it had happened because she was trying so hard to reach her puppy. The parents felt as if they were witnessing a miracle right in their living room. The puppy, sensing the excitement, barked happily and circled the baby before lying down again, encouraging her to continue. That night, the parents hardly slept. They replayed the image in their minds over and over, their daughter's small legs moving even slightly. It was a moment of hope they thought they might never see. From then on, the puppy became more than just a motivator. He became her partner in therapy. Each day, he would guide her around the room, making her laugh, making her try harder. He was patient, never rushing, never leaving her behind. The bond was so natural that even professionals could not believe it. The baby, who once lay silently in her crib with weak legs, now had a spark of life in her eyes. She had a reason to fight, and that reason had 4 paws, a wagging tail, and a heart full of love. The parents realized something important. They had once feared that their daughter's life would be filled only with struggle. But now, with the puppy by her side, her story was changing. It was no longer just about her paralysis, it was about the miracle of friendship, determination, and the healing power of love. And deep inside, they knew this was only the beginning. Bigger miracles were yet to come. The little girl's life was changing in ways no one had expected. What once seemed like a hopeless condition was slowly turning into a story filled with miracles. The German Shepherd puppy had grown bigger now, but his love for the baby girl only grew stronger with each passing day. He no longer looked like a small, clumsy pup. His legs were long and strong, his ears stood tall, and his coat had become shiny and full. Yet around the baby, he was still as gentle as ever, lowering his head and softening his steps whenever he was near her. By this time, the baby girl had become more active. Her arms had grown stronger from all the time she had pulled herself across the floor to reach her best friend. She had learned to balance her body for longer stretches of time, and her little legs had even shown signs of movement. It was not much, but it was enough to fill the parents with endless hope. One morning, as sunlight poured into the nursery, the parents placed their daughter on her playmat. The puppy lay down a few feet away, wagging his tail slowly. The little girl's eyes lit up as soon as she saw him. With determination, she began to drag herself forward, her hands gripping the blanket, her arms pulling her tiny body. The puppy barked softly as if cheering her on. This time, something different happened. Her legs twitched again, stronger than before. The mother gasped and clapped her hands, tears filling her eyes. "She's trying harder," she exclaimed. The father bent down, his voice trembling with excitement. "Come on, sweetheart, you can do it. He's waiting for you." The baby let out a joyful laugh, her eyes fixed on the puppy, who patiently waited until she reached him. When she finally touched his fur, the puppy leaned forward and licked her face, making her giggle even louder. That moment was more than just play. It was therapy, progress, and love all in one. The parents soon realized that their daughter's willpower came from her bond with the dog, so they began to make the puppy part of every exercise. Instead of using toys or colorful objects, they used the dog as her motivation. The father would call the puppy to stand at one end of the room, while the mother placed the baby on the floor. The puppy would wag his tail, waiting patiently. The little girl would push, pull, and even attempt to kick her legs just to get closer to him. Each day she made more progress than the day before. The doctors who monitored her could hardly believe the changes. One of them shook his head in wonder. "It's remarkable," he said. "She is showing improvements we did not expect at this stage. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." The parents smiled but knew the truth. It wasn't them. It was the puppy. As the weeks passed, the puppy grew into a protector as well as a companion. He would sleep beside the baby's crib at night, his ears alert to any sound. If she cried in the middle of the night, he would nudge the parents awake by pawing at the bed or whining softly. It was as if he had taken responsibility for her care. The parents began to feel that he was not just a dog, but a guardian angel in disguise. One evening, the family gathered in the living room. The father placed the baby on the carpet while the puppy sat across from her. She looked at him with determination, then pushed herself forward. Her legs twitched again, stronger this time. Suddenly, she managed to bend one knee slightly and push herself a little farther. The room fell silent for a moment, then filled with cheers. The mother clapped, the father laughed with joy, and the puppy barked happily, circling her in excitement. The little girl laughed too, her face glowing with pride. She did not understand the medical meaning of what she had just done, but she knew she had done something special. More importantly, she knew her best friend was proud of her. The news of her progress began to spread beyond their home. Relatives, friends, and neighbors who once felt pity for the child now came to witness the miracle with their own eyes. They saw how the puppy acted as her teacher, her motivator, and her comfort. They saw how the baby responded with energy and determination whenever he was around. Many left the house with tears in their eyes, moved by the sight of such pure love and loyalty. Even specialists from the hospital became curious. One day, a therapist visited the home to observe. She watched as the puppy lay a few steps away and the baby tried her best to crawl toward him. The therapist was amazed. "Animals have been used in therapy before," she explained. "But this bond is extraordinary. He is guiding her better than many professional tools." The parents nodded. They knew it was true. Their daughter was not just surviving. She was thriving because of the dog. As the little girl's first birthday approached, the family prepared a small celebration. The house was decorated with balloons and relatives gathered to mark the special day. When it came time for the baby to play on her blanket, the puppy was, of course, by her side. Everyone watched as she moved toward him, her little legs kicking faintly, her arms pulling strongly. When she reached him, he licked her cheek and the room erupted with applause. It was not just a birthday, it was a celebration of progress, of miracles, of hope. That night, after the guests had left, the parents sat quietly, watching their daughter sleep peacefully in her crib with the puppy curled up beside her. The mother whispered, "He saved her spirit. She was once so quiet, so fragile. Now look at her." The father nodded, placing a hand on the dog's back. He gave her a reason to fight. That's what love does. It creates miracles. As the puppy grew stronger and more protective, the bond only deepened. The little girl's progress was slow, but it was real. Every small movement of her legs, every push of her arms, every giggle of joy was a step forward. And at the heart of it all was her loyal German shepherd, who never once left her side. The parents often thought about the future. They knew challenges still lay ahead, but they no longer lived in fear. They had seen what hope and determination could do. They had witnessed the miracle of friendship between a child and a dog. And deep inside, they believed that bigger breakthroughs were yet to come. The miracle was not just about physical progress. It was about the transformation of an entire family. Once filled with sadness, their home now overflowed with love, laughter, and hope. And it was all because of the loyal puppy who had come into their lives at just the right time. The years passed and the little girl grew older. She was no longer the fragile baby who once lay silently in her crib with weak legs. Now she was a lively child whose laughter filled the house each day. Her body was still not fully strong, but she had come a long way. What doctors once believed impossible was slowly becoming reality. The parents often said that their daughter's progress was not written in medical books. It was written in love, faith, and the loyalty of a German shepherd who had never left her side. The dog had grown too. The tiny puppy had become a majestic German shepherd with a powerful body and sharp eyes. His coat shined, his legs were strong, and his presence was commanding. Yet around the little girl, he was still the same gentle protector he had always been. He followed her everywhere, always walking at her pace, never rushing ahead. When she struggled, he stayed close, as if reminding her that she was not alone. The girl's therapy had changed as she grew. Her parents, encouraged by her early signs of movement, enrolled her in physical therapy sessions. The doctors and therapists were amazed at how much progress she had already made with the help of the dog. "Her spirit is incredible," one therapist said. "She has more determination than many children I've seen." The parents always smiled and nodded, silently knowing that the dog had been her true therapist from the start. At home, the dog continued his role. The parents would place small objects or toys across the room, but the little girl always had the most energy when the dog was her goal. She wanted to reach him more than anything else. He would lie on the floor wagging his tail, waiting patiently as she worked hard to move closer. Sometimes she would fall forward or lose her balance, but the dog never let her feel defeated. He would nudge her gently, lick her cheek, or bark softly to lift her spirit. She would laugh and try again, never giving up. One afternoon, a miracle happened. The parents had placed the girl on her therapy mat while the dog sat nearby. As usual, she tried to pull herself forward. But then, for the first time, she pushed down on her arms, shifted her weight, and lifted herself into a sitting position without help. The parents gasped in shock. The dog wagged his tail furiously and barked, circling her with excitement. The girl clapped her little hands, her face glowing with pride. That was only the beginning. Over the next few months, her strength increased. She learned to balance in a sitting position, then began to crawl. Though her legs were still weak, they slowly gained more movement. The parents, who once feared their daughter might never walk, now watched with tears in their eyes as she inched closer to that dream every day. The bond between the girl and the dog was unshakable. He guarded her like a shadow, protecting her from falls, guiding her movements, and giving her the courage to keep trying. When visitors came to the house, they were amazed by how the dog acted as if he were her personal helper. If she dropped a toy, he would pick it up and place it in her lap. If she cried, he would sit close and rest his head on her shoulder. People often said, "This is not just a dog, this is a gift from heaven." As the girl grew into a toddler, she became more confident. One day, with the help of braces on her legs, she stood for the very first time. Her parents stood nearby, holding their breath, afraid she might fall. But the dog stood right beside her, pressing his body gently against her side to give her balance. She reached out, placed her little hand on his back, and together they took a small step. Then another, and another. It was slow, shaky, and difficult, but it was walking. The parents could not hold back their tears. They hugged each other tightly, overwhelmed by the miracle they were witnessing. "She's walking," the mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Our baby is walking." The father nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "She's not walking alone," he said softly. "She's walking with him." From that moment on, the dog became not only her friend, but also her support. With her hand resting on his back, she practiced walking around the house. The dog never moved too quickly, never pulled away. He adjusted his pace to hers, guiding her as patiently as any human helper could. Together, they turned the impossible into reality. The community soon learned about the girl's progress. People who had once pitied her now admired her strength. Many came to see her walking with the dog by her side. Schools, newspapers, and even local organizations shared her story, calling it the miracle of love and loyalty. She and her dog became symbols of hope, showing that sometimes the most powerful medicine is not found in hospitals but in hearts. Years passed and the little girl grew stronger. She still faced challenges, but she faced them with courage. She attended school, played with other children, and lived her life with joy. Through every stage, her German Shepherd remained her constant companion. He guarded her on the playground, sat beside her during homework, and walked with her wherever she went. The parents often reflected on the journey. They remembered the nights of fear, the tears and the hopelessness they once felt. They remembered the doctor's warnings and their own silent prayers. And then they looked at their daughter, laughing, walking, living fully, and at the dog who had made it possible. Their hearts swelled with gratitude. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with warm colors, the girl sat on the porch with her dog beside her. She wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "You're my best friend. You gave me strength when no one else could." The dog wagged his tail and licked her cheek as if he understood every word. Her story became more than just a family tale. It became an inspiration to many. People who heard about it learned to believe in miracles, to value love, and to see the power of friendship in unexpected places. The girl's life was no longer defined by paralysis, it was defined by courage, hope, and the miracle of a loyal German Shepherd puppy who had grown into her lifelong guardian. And so, what began as a silent struggle turned into a story of triumph. A baby once trapped by weakness had found her strength. A family once lost in despair had found joy. And a puppy, who walked into their home with innocent eyes, had turned into the miracle they never knew they needed. The miracle was not just in her steps, but in the bond that carried her there. A bond built on loyalty, trust, and unconditional love. A bond that would last forever.